30F found receipts from restaurants I'd never heard of in my husband's 32M jacket. After 7 years of marriage, I discovered his secret Wednesday routine. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, still trying to process everything. My husband Daniel and I have been married for 7 years, together for 9. We met through mutual friends at a college reunion, had an immediate connection, and built what I thought was a solid life together. We don't have children, a mutual decision to focus on our careers for now, but we do have a golden retriever named Baxter, who's basically our fur baby. I work as a high school counselor, and Daniel is a software engineer for a healthcare tech company. Our careers keep us busy, but we've always made time for each other. Date nights every Friday, weekend hikes with Baxter, and cooking together on Sundays. These rituals kept us connected despite our hectic schedules. Until recently, I would have described our marriage as stable and loving. We had the occasional disagreement, of course, but nothing major. We communicated well, respected each other's independence, and genuinely enjoyed spending time together. At least, that's what I believed. Looking back, I can see that small changes began about 8 months ago. Daniel started working later on Wednesdays, explaining that his team had implemented a new midweek sync meeting that often ran long. He'd come home around 8:30 or 9 p.m. instead of his usual 6 p.m., sometimes smelling faintly of alcohol, which he attributed to team happy hours after the meetings. I didn't question it much at first. His company was growing rapidly, and these kinds of schedule adjustments seemed reasonable. Plus, it was only 1 day a week, and he was consistent about being present and engaged on other days. Then other small changes appeared. Daniel became more protective of his phone, installed a fingerprint lock when previously we both knew each other's passcodes, and would sometimes step outside to take calls. When I asked about these changes, he mentioned increased security protocols at work for all employees handling sensitive healthcare data. Again, the explanation seemed plausible, so I pushed aside the faint unease these changes created. I trusted Daniel completely and had never had any reason to doubt him before. The truth revealed itself in the most mundane way possible. I was doing seasonal clothes rotation, putting away summer items and bringing out fall/winter ones, when I found a stack of receipts in the pocket of Daniel's light jacket. At first, I didn't think much of it. Daniel was notorious for stuffing receipts in his pockets rather than throwing them away. I was about to toss them in the recycling when I noticed they were all from restaurants, specifically restaurants I'd never heard of, despite living in our city for over a decade and considering myself something of a foodie. More curiously, all the receipts were from Wednesdays, dated over the past several months. Each showed dinner for 2, with wine or cocktails, at upscale places across town, far from Daniel's office. The most recent receipt, from just 3 days earlier, was for 170 secs at a French bistro I'd actually been wanting to try. Daniel had never mentioned eating there. Something cold settled in my stomach as I laid the receipts out on our bed. Why would Daniel be dining at expensive restaurants with someone else and never mentioning it to me? Why were they all on Wednesdays? And why at places so far from his office if these were truly work meetings? I wish I could say I gave him the benefit of the doubt, but in that moment, instinct took over. I checked our joint credit card statement online and found more Wednesday restaurant charges going back almost 8 months, along with sporadic charges at a hotel bar across town, always on Wednesdays. My hands were shaking as I continued investigating. I looked at our location sharing app, which we'd set up years ago for safety reasons. Scrolling back through Daniel's location history on recent Wednesdays showed he wasn't anywhere near his office during those supposed midweek sync meetings. Instead, he was at these various restaurants, and on several occasions, at an address in a neighborhood about 30 minutes away. I entered the address into Google Maps. It was an upscale apartment complex. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I needed to know the truth. While Daniel was in the shower that evening, I checked his email on our shared tablet. I found nothing suspicious initially, but then noticed a separate email app I hadn't seen before. It was locked, but I knew Daniel often used variations of the same few passwords. On my third attempt, I was in, and what I found confirmed my worst fears. There were dozens of emails between Daniel and a woman named Melissa, filled with intimate language, inside jokes, and plans for their Wednesday evenings together. Photos they'd shared, references to a special place, presumably the apartment I'd seen in his location history. From the emails, I learned that Melissa was a former colleague who had left his company about a year ago. Their relationship had apparently begun as innocent catch-up lunches before evolving into something more. The most recent email confirmed plans for the following Wednesday at our usual spot. I felt physically ill as I carefully closed the app and returned the tablet exactly as I'd found it. For the rest of the evening, I went through the motions of normal life, making dinner, discussing weekend plans, watching TV beside the man who had been systematically deceiving me for months. Every casual mention of his Wednesday work meeting now felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I spent the next 2 days gathering my thoughts and deciding how to proceed. Part of me wanted to confront Daniel immediately, but another part needed time to process and prepare. I didn't want emotion to overwhelm the conversation when it happened. I chose to confront him on Saturday morning. We were supposed to go hiking with Baxter, but I asked if we could talk first. I placed the stack of receipts on the kitchen table between us. I found these while organizing the closet, I said calmly. Can you explain why you've been having expensive dinners every Wednesday without ever mentioning them to me? Daniel froze momentarily, then tried to recover. Oh, those are just work dinners with clients. I probably mentioned them. You never did, I replied. And it's interesting that they're all on Wednesdays, all at places far from your office. Even more interesting that on many of these same nights, your location history shows you at an apartment complex in Oakwood Heights afterward. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly calculating his next move. There's no point in lying anymore, I continued, my voice breaking slightly. I know about Melissa. I've seen the emails, the photos, the plans for your usual spot. For several moments, he said nothing, just stared at the receipts on the table. When he finally looked up, his expression had shifted from shock to resignation. I never meant for any of this to happen, he began, using the cliché I'd read about in countless infidelity stories, but never expected to hear directly from my husband. What followed was a confession that shattered the foundation of my reality. Daniel admitted to an 8-month affair with Melissa. What began as innocent catch-up with a former colleague had evolved into weekly dinner dates and visits to her apartment. The mid-week sync meetings were entirely fabricated. The hotel bar charges were from their first few meetings, before they started going to her place. Why? I asked, the question that had been burning inside me since finding those receipts. If you were unhappy with me, with us, why not just say so? That's the thing, he said, looking genuinely confused by his own actions. I wasn't unhappy with you. I love our life together. Melissa was just different, exciting, something that was just mine. The selfishness of that statement stunned me. The idea that he felt entitled to maintain our marriage while simultaneously building a separate, intimate relationship that he could compartmentalize so completely was almost more hurtful than the physical betrayal itself. When I asked if he loved her, his hesitation was answer enough. I don't know what I feel anymore, he finally said. It all got complicated. That afternoon, Daniel packed a bag and went to stay with his brother. I spent the weekend alternating between numbness, rage, and debilitating sadness. I called my sister, who immediately drove 3 hours to stay with me. I consulted a lawyer to understand my options. I started researching therapists who specialized in betrayal trauma. The following weeks were a blur of practical matters and emotional processing. Friends and family rallied around me, though some expressed shock that Daniel, who had always seemed so devoted, could have led such an elaborate double life. Daniel's initial response was a mixture of shame, remorse, and confusion about his own actions. He sent lengthy emails analyzing how he had allowed himself to start and continue the affair, describing it as the biggest mistake of my life and begging for another chance. 3 weeks after discovery, he revealed that he had ended things completely with Melissa and had begun individual therapy to understand his choices. He suggested couples counseling to see if we could rebuild what was broken. I was conflicted. Part of me still loved the man I thought I knew, the life we had built together. Another part wondered if I could ever trust him again after such calculated, ongoing deception. Would every business dinner, every late meeting, every unexplained receipt trigger suspicion? Was that any way to live? After much reflection and consultation with my own therapist, I agreed to try couples counseling, not because I had decided to stay, but because I needed closure either way. I needed to understand how we had reached this point before I could make a final decision about our future. The counseling process was grueling but illuminating. We uncovered patterns in our relationship that had created distance. My tendency to manage stress through silent withdrawal, his conflict avoidance, our mutual habit of prioritizing harmony over authentic connection. None of these issues excused his affair, but they helped explain how our relationship had become vulnerable to outside interference. The most significant breakthrough came when Daniel finally took full accountability without justifications or excuses. The truth is, I made hundreds of selfish choices, he admitted during one session. Each time I chose to see her, lie to you, create elaborate cover stories, those were active decisions to betray your trust. I could have addressed any issues in our marriage directly. I chose the option that gave me what I wanted without having to risk losing what we had. This level of accountability, painful as it was to hear, gave me hope that he was truly understanding the magnitude of his actions, rather than minimizing or justifying them. It's been 6 months since D-Day. After 2 months of separation, Daniel moved back into our home, though he's still sleeping in the guest room. We continue both individual and couples therapy weekly. Baxter's perhaps the only member of our household who's fully adjusted to the new normal, happily accepting double walks from parents who need thinking time. Trust rebuilds slowly, in small actions. Daniel has maintained complete transparency with his devices and whereabouts. He changed jobs to eliminate any potential connection to Melissa's professional circle. He's been patient with my questions and triggers, understanding that trust once broken requires not just apologies, but consistent, trustworthy behavior over time. I've installed boundaries I never thought I'd need in a marriage: access to all accounts, location sharing, check-ins during late work events. Sometimes implementing these measures makes me feel like I've become someone I don't recognize: suspicious, vigilant, guarded. Other times, they provide the security I need to attempt rebuilding. The restaurant receipts that started this journey are sealed in an envelope in my desk drawer. I'm not sure why I've kept them. Perhaps as a reminder to trust my instincts, perhaps as evidence in case I need it someday. My therapist suggests I'll know when it's time to throw them away, that the action will represent a milestone in my healing process. As for our marriage, I still haven't made a final decision. Some days, when we share a genuine laugh or collaborate effortlessly on a household project, I glimpse what could be a stronger, more authentic relationship built from the ashes of the old one. Other days, when an unexpected late meeting triggers anxiety, or I find myself checking his location, I wonder if complete trust is possible after such profound betrayal. What I do know is that I'm rebuilding myself, regardless of what happens with our marriage. I'm reconnecting with friends I had neglected, pursuing interests I had set aside, and learning to validate my own perceptions rather than dismissing my instincts. Through therapy and painful reflection, I've gained insights that might help others. 1. Trust unexpected financial paper trails. The restaurant receipts seemed insignificant initially, but contained the truth my husband had been hiding for months. Unusual spending patterns, especially at restaurants and hotels, often reveal hidden behaviors. 2. When explanations make logical sense but still feel wrong, trust that feeling. Daniel's midweek sync meeting excuse was plausible on its face, but didn't align with other observations over time. 3. Compartmentalization is a powerful psychological mechanism that allows people to maintain seemingly contradictory lives. My husband genuinely believed he could love me while systematically betraying me each week. 4. Recovery from infidelity isn't linear. Some days I feel hopeful and healing. Other days, a random trigger can send me back to the moment of discovery. Both experiences are valid parts of the process. 5. Whatever decision you make, staying or leaving, make it from a position of strength and self-knowledge, not fear or external pressure. There's no universal right answer after betrayal, only the path that brings you peace. For those in the early stages of suspicion or discovery, know that the overwhelming pain does eventually become manageable. Whether through reconciliation or separation, you will find your way forward. The future may look different than you planned, but it can still hold joy, authenticity, and eventually trust, either in a rebuilt relationship or in a new chapter of life. TLDR, found restaurant receipts in my husband's jacket that led to discovering his 8-month affair with a former colleague. Every Wednesday work meeting was actually a date night across town. 6 months post-discovery, we're in therapy and cautiously attempting to rebuild, though I haven't decided whether our marriage will ultimately survive. Edit. Thank you all for the overwhelming support and thoughtful advice. To address some common questions. 1. Why try to reconcile after such a betrayal? This is something I ask myself regularly. 7 years of marriage and the person I believed Daniel to be before the affair factor into my willingness to at least explore rebuilding. I'm giving myself permission to try without promising to stay. 2. Did you confront Melissa? No. She owes me nothing, and Daniel is the one who made vows to me. Engaging with her would only add drama to an already painful situation. 3. Have you been tested for STDs? Yes, that was one of the first things I did after discovery. All clear, thankfully. 4. Did Daniel tell you everything? Or are you still discovering lies? As far as I can tell, his disclosure was complete once confronted with evidence. The timeline and details have remained consistent through our therapy process. 5. Do friends and family know? A small circle knows the full truth. For others, we've simply said we're working through significant issues in our marriage. I'm not interested in managing others' opinions while still figuring out my own. Thank you again for letting me share this story. Writing it out has been unexpectedly therapeutic, and your support means more than you know.